on the rebound finds happiness in the arms of a new man.
They were engaged and even starting to plan their wedding.
She already knew the colors. She couldn't stop talking about it.
But their wedding bells will never ring.
There's blood everywhere.
Her fiancé is the one who found her.
As the investigation begins, the bonds of love will be tested.
His timeline didn't necessarily add up.
After they broke up, they still saw each other.
There's a possibility for a love triangle going on.
Did he know she was cheating?
They both have a motive, and now they're pointing the finger at each other.
It opened all kind of doors and all kind of new questions.
You think you're going to commit the perfect crime, and there's no such thing.
November 18th, 2015. It's a typical Wednesday morning in Portage, Indiana, a suburban community at the southern tip of Lake Michigan.
Portage is about 45 minutes outside of Chicago. It's a quiet, safe community. It's the kind of place that people go to start families and get away from the big city.
But on this morning, one Portage family is about to learn that tragedy can strike anywhere, even in the safest of places.
911 was your emergency.
Funny in the ambulance right now, please, please, please.
The caller is 20-year-old Martell Robinson.
He was so upset, crying hysterically.
He was just screaming, come help me. There's something wrong with my fiance.
Just lay on the ground, please.
Do you know what happened?
No, I don't.
He said he had just gotten home from working a late shift.
I just see blood just everywhere. Please, just send somebody, please.
Sheriff's Department!
Within minutes, officers arrive on the scene.
The door was open. They come in at gunpoint and discover this guy in there.
Hands, show me your hands!
No, I was doing that call.
Okay, move to the corner of the room. He clearly has blood on his clothing and his hands, so they didn't know what to take of it.
Sometimes the person who's making the 911 call is, in fact, the perpetrator.
Police quickly turn their attention to Martell's fiancée, 30-year-old Tiara Thomas.
She is laying on the floor. There's blood everywhere.
The young woman had been shot several times.
You can see that she has a head injury.
They didn't know what to think. Had they just walked in on a domestic dispute, or was there a killer on the loose?
Gary, Indiana native Tiara Thomas was always the life of the party.
She was a fun-loving person, very spontaneous, and someone that everybody got along with.
She loved to make people laugh, and when they were around her, they just felt warm and welcome and at home.
Though no one felt more at home around Tiara than Kevin Campbell.
Tiara and Kevin have a long history.
Together since high school, Kevin and Tiara had taken on every challenge thrown at them and formed a bond well beyond their years.
It was such a close relationship together. Tiara's family took him in like he was one of their own.
It wasn't long before Tiara and Kevin announced they were adding a new member to the family, too.
After Kevin and Tiara graduated, she got pregnant.
Tiara and Kevin went from high school sweethearts to building a family almost immediately.
Though the two never tied the knot, over the next several years, they had 2 more children and continued building a life together.
Kevin became a police officer with Gary Police Department in Indiana.
Tiara got a job at the Department of Social Services and started taking evening classes at the local college.
Well, I see you tonight.
Well, if you can pull me away from my homework, you can.
I'll see what I can do.
She had dreams of being an accountant, one day opening her own daycare.
As their family grew, Kevin and Tiara bought a house just outside Gary, and Kevin transferred departments to be closer to home.
They were both growing in their careers.
But with busy jobs and raising 3 kids, they had less time for each other. and the romance began to fade.
They had been together 14 years. They have 3 children together. So there was a lot vested in that relationship, but things started to gradually fall apart.
Eventually, Tiara and the kids moved out, and Kevin moved on.
Kevin started dating a young girl named Brooke, who was a waitress at a diner where a lot of local Hammond cops like to hang out.
Kevin's new relationship was a bit of a shock to Tiara.
When she found out that Kevin had a younger woman, you know, that kind of made Tiara feel a little insecure.
It definitely didn't help that Kevin and Brooke got married and had a baby together.
Tiara was heartbroken.
They had been together for 14 years and he never popped the question. Suddenly he made this new woman his wife. It was a big blow to Tiara.
But Tiara wouldn't stay down for long.
You got a minute?
Yeah, of course. Come in.
Tiara meets this young gentleman, Martel, who she works with.
Despite the colleagues' age difference, the two instantly hit it off.
Tiara was significantly older than Martel.
The age difference didn't even faze them. They just more so fell in love with each other.
They had a lot in common. Their conversations were great.
By the beginning of 2015, Martel moved into Tiara's apartment.
He'd also taken a night job at a nearby factory to start earning some more money.
You know, Martel was all in. You know, he loved Tiara and her children. He was in it for the long haul.
And unlike Kevin, Martel was willing to make it official.
He proposed to her and they were set to be married.
1 second before I forget. You know, I've been planning and looking, and look at this cake right here. What do you think about that?
Look, I told you, if you love it, I love it.
That's why I love you.
Is that right?
She was super excited to get married. She's ready to go.
Her and Kevin had been separated for about a year. Something felt different with Martel. It's like she had waited for him her whole life.
The future for Tiara was really bright.
But now, on the morning of November 18th, 2015, her future hangs in the balance.
Hands, show me your hands.
No, I was the one that called.
Martel had just called 911 to report that he had found Tiara laying on the floor, covered in blood.
Patrol officers respond, find her in the bedroom.
There's pooling of blood under the victim, so they obviously know they have a very serious crime scene here.
It was gruesome.
There's a shoulder wound that wasn't fatal. There's also a shot that went through both arms to the head.
But there may be a faint glimmer of hope.
She's still alive.
By mid-November of 2015, 30-year-old Tiara Thomas was looking to the future with her new fiancé, Martel Robinson.
They were in love and ecstatic to build a life together.
But on the morning of November 18th, 2015, Till Death Do Us Part becomes all too real.
After receiving a call from Martel, police arrived to find her lying on their bedroom floor, covered in blood, her body riddled with bullets.
At first, they thought she was dead, but they were able to detect a faint pulse.
She was clinging to life, so they're trying to do everything that they can.
She's transported out of there to the hospital.
While EMTs work to save Tiara, officers transport Martel to the station for a formal statement.
Despite him telling them that we came in and discovered her like that, they obviously can't verify that on his word.
Martel's the one who found her and called us. You have to look at him.
While Martel waits at the station, detectives arrive at the crime scene and begin their investigation.
They find these 9mm shell casings.
There was no weapon found. The detectives discovered a pillow with gunshot holes in it.
The belief is a pillow was used to try to silence the shots.
Other aspects of the scene allow detectives to reconstruct the shooter's likely motive.
There was no signs of forced entry. It didn't appear that anything was stolen.
They had no evidence that there was an attempted sexual assault.
It appears to have been a cold-blooded, violent attack.
This was someone close to her, someone who either had a key or for whom she would have opened the door or who would have known when the door would have been unlocked.
A fact that immediately points to one man.
It would make sense for Martell to be a prime suspect.
He's found at the crime scene. He obviously has access and a key to the residence. Certainly the opportunity for him to be the perpetrator is there.
Martell could have shot Tierra, ditched the gun, and then called 911 as the distraught fiancé.
But when detectives join him in the interrogation room, Tierra's fiancé still appears beside himself with grief.
Oh my God! Oh my God!
You okay?
No, sir, no!
Based on his reaction in the interrogation room, he's beyond heartbroken.
Or Martell's a good actor.
Well, I'm not sure what happened. So we're gonna.
Oh my God!
We're gonna try.
According to Martell, he and Tierra had been alone together earlier that evening.
The kids had spent the night with their father, Tierra's ex, Kevin Campbell.
They came pick him up yesterday. So me and her, we were together up until 10 o'clock last night. That didn't work.
He stated that he works a shift and he gets off at 7 o'clock in the morning.
Martell also says just before his shift ended, he tried to call Tierra to make sure she was up in time for work.
I figured, hey, kid's not home. She probably on sleep. So as soon as I'm getting off work, I'm calling her phone.
She didn't answer, which was odd to him because he knew that she should be getting up, getting, ready for work.
According to Martell, he noticed something else odd when he got home.
Tierra, my apartment was on lock. Of course, I was going to go in there and say something to it, but that's not safe. Tierra. I walked in there. She was just on the floor, just bleeding everywhere.
He became very hysterical. He immediately called 911.
That's terrible to come home to. And I want to be here to talk to you and offer you any type of help that we can get you better. But I also want to help her by finding out exactly what went down. We asked Martell, what does he think? Because, who would have done this?
Martell can think of only one person.
I don't want to say baby daddy, but the kid's father and her don't get along.
He's saying the only person that might have a beef with her is her ex, the father of her 3 children, Kevin Campbell.
He got a gun, he's a cop. That's the only thing that adds up to me. And nobody else would try to harm her at all.
Martell's quick accusation raises red flags for detectives.
He immediately pointed the finger at this guy, and police were thinking, is this an honest suspicion, or is this an attempt to throw the investigation off track?
Of course, those are things that, we're going to look at every way we can.
And in order to do that, detectives will need Martell's full cooperation.
We asked to do some tests, which he cooperated with. We wanted to examine his phone, which he immediately gave us.
He was asked for his clothing, articles as well. He immediately volunteered to surrender them for forensics.
At the end of the interview, detectives deal Martell a final blow.
He's got some really bad news, man.
Please don't, Dad. Please, I don't want to know.
Tierra had passed away.
Our fire department's really good about, getting them to the hospital as quickly as possible. But she ultimately succumbed to her injuries.
No! No, please, no!
He just broke down and cried.
Martell was devastated. He was inconsolable, crying, wailing, and this could be heard throughout the police station.
According to a recent study, 22% of victims who suffer gunshot wounds die as a result of their injuries. However, gunshot wounds that result in brain injuries are among the most lethal, with a reported fatality rate between 85 and 90%. Just hours after 30-year-old Tiara Thomas was shot in her Portage, Indiana apartment, detectives suddenly have a homicide investigation on their hands. While his reaction appears genuine, detectives can't help but wonder if they're watching a heartbroken fiancé or a killer trying desperately to cover his tracks.
Is this for the camera, so to speak? Is it, for our interview? Is it truly grief? Sometimes it's hard to say.
Especially considering Martel's insistence that Tiara's ex, Kevin Campbell, is responsible for her death.
Detectives can't help but notice that, even though he's genuinely distraught, he seems to be very adamant in pointing the finger at Kevin.
Still, detectives follow his lead. Less than an hour after interviewing Martel, Kevin is called down to the station.
Kevin was also very emotional. He was in a complete state of shock. He was trying to figure out who could have done this to Tiara as well.
For the first several minutes of the interview, when we especially started talking about Tiara, he was crying.
How long were you guys together? It's okay. A lot happened today.
He's crying profusely, so much so that the police officer decided to kind of give him a minute.
He's a fellow brother police officer, so they give him certain consideration.
Once Kevin regains his composure, he's able to answer the detective's questions.
Were you married at some point? Okay. But you were raising 3 beautiful children, right?
Yeah.
They've been separated, but according to him, it's pretty amicable.
He talked about, she was great as far as allowing to see the children.
Including the night before Tiara's murder.
He had picked the kids up 5:30-ish the prior night, brought them home, and said he was home all night. Until morning when he got them up.
What time did you have to get them all up?
A little after 5:45, I believe.
Kevin says he left at about 6:45 to take them to school in Portage.
Kevin said he hadn't seen Tiara since he picked them up, although they had been texting each other that night.
Kevin told the investigators that he was texting Tiara about homework for the kids.
You guys kind of went back and forth about school stuff?
And then the next morning, he texted her again.
He said that he didn't hear from Tiara that morning.
Do you think anything one way or the other, unusual or not unusual, that she didn't respond?
I figured she must still been asleep.
Okay.
It seems he wasn't worried enough to go check on her. But even if he had, Kevin tells detectives that he didn't have a key to her apartment.
My oldest has a key, but he doesn't bring it with him.
Next, detectives ask Kevin the same question they asked Martel Robinson. Who would want to hurt Tiara?
My first thought would be Martel.
Much like Martel, Kevin seemed intent on implicating the other man in Tiara's life.
Detectives had 2 men, both emotional, both having feelings for the victim, pointing the finger at each other.
But is there another possibility?
Was she jealous of the gal that's your wife now?
I don't think so.
They weren't ruling anything out at this point. And detectives knew that there's a possibility for jealousy or envy to also be a part of this whole situation.
Brooke was the new wife, and although Kevin had been with Tiara for 14 years, he never married her.
Detectives wondered if, in Tiara's mind, Brooke had broken up her family. And perhaps in Brooke's mind, Tiara was always going to be a part of Kevin's life. And maybe she was tired of living in her shadow.
Detectives bring Brooke in for questioning that afternoon, where she's pretty candid about her relationship with Tiara.
I don't think she ever really got over the fact of Kevin marrying me.
Brooke goes on to say that she didn't have any animosity toward Tiara.
Lord knows I tried to be nice to her, but she just wasn't having it.
Brooke also told detectives that as far as she knew, Kevin had been home all night.
I was up about 2 or 3 times with the baby, and he slept right through it.
So she gives him an alibi to his whereabouts at the time of the murder.
Brooke said she never left the house either. She had been taking care of their young child all night.
With Kevin and his new wife seemingly alibied out, detectives circle back to Martell.
The police speak to his supervisor to question him about Martell's whereabouts.
I spoke to his supervisor of the midnight shift, who said he saw him all night.
He worked at late shift. He got off at 7 in the morning.
So with both alibis seemingly checking out, detectives are at a standstill.
Could there be something or someone detectives have overlooked?
Maybe there's a third man in Tiara's life, somebody that her ex and her fiance had no idea about.
Hoping to gain more insight into Tiara's personal life, detectives spend the next day digging into her background.
As part of the investigation, they're going to reach out to the close friends and acquaintances of the victim.
Though it's not until detectives sit down with a friend of Tiara's named Stephanie Phillips that they truly learn anything useful.
She laid it out. I mean, she was very clear. She said, listen, you know, Martell and Tiara are good. Their relationship is good.
So she wasn't seeing anyone else?
I mean, nobody except Kevin.
Her ex-boyfriend?
Yes.
As it turned out, it wasn't a clear break.
Stephanie was able to tell that there was something going on between Tiara and Kevin.
They've still been hooking up, despite the fact that they're both with other people.
"24 hours after 30-year-old Tiara Thomas was gunned down, detectives receive intel from Tiara's friend that could blow the case wide open.
Stephanie thinks that Tiara may have been going behind her fiance's back with her ex-boyfriend.
Well, her friend said after they essentially broke up, they still saw each other.
This was a very significant turn in the case because it opened up so many questions in the investigation.
Could Martell have found out that Tiara had been seeing Kevin?
Detectives wonder if his grief could have actually been remorse over something he had done in a jealous rage.
Or could her ex-boyfriend Kevin be the one to blame? Perhaps the pending nuptials of Tiara and Martell were more than he could bear.
The affair between Tiara and Kevin seemed to taper off the more serious that Martell and Tiara got about their relationship. And once they started setting a wedding date, Tiara became far and far more removed from Kevin.
Another possibility is Kevin's new wife, Brooke. Maybe she learned her husband was cheating on her with Tiara and sought revenge.
Brooke, Martell, Kevin, if what Stephanie is saying is true, any one of them could have had a motive.
And are you sure there's still something going on between them?
Well, he sure acts like it.
It seemed to the friend that Kevin had made sexual comments to Tiara, almost like you're still together.
And what kind of comments are we talking about? Did you ever see them get physical?
Not exactly.
Kevin would send her flirty text messages.
But Kevin's texts weren't just flirty.
Stephanie did share one thing that was somewhat disturbing. His son went to the orthodontist and it was going to be a fairly expensive bill. And Kevin said something to her like, well, if you're going to need that money, when can I get an appointment with you?
It seemed like Kevin wasn't going to give Tiara money for their son unless she agreed to hook up with him.
Tiara shared with her that Kevin was already under some sort of financial constraints.
So that was another red flag for us.
With Stephanie's allegations in mind, detectives begin digging into Kevin's finances.
They find out that he's been making these huge child support payments.
Initially, when they separated, there was no formal child support or really any other guidelines set down. They just kind of did it between them. Tiara then in 2015 went to court, and the final court order was an amount of $1,500 a month taken out of his checks.
To detectives, the court order seemed like a significant amount for someone in Kevin's situation.
Kevin had a lot going on. He had a new wife, with a new small child, and he has financial responsibility extended to the new household as well as the old household.
Police officers don't make all that much. I don't think Kevin, given his other bills, could keep up with the child support payments.
Given Kevin's financial statements, it seemed child support wasn't the only thing Kevin had fallen behind on.
We found out on his credit report there were accounts and collections, there were accounts closed, there were written off by companies, delinquencies of 120 days, a couple of credit cards. It was a mess.
His savings account had about $7.89 in it, and Kevin was basically broke.
Then, 5 days before Tierra's murder, Kevin had hit rock bottom.
Kevin had his vehicle repossessed while him and his wife were at the mall.
They came out from shopping and it's gone.
Which leaves detectives wondering if a desperate Kevin had been pushed to the breaking point.
Was this the motive for Kevin to have murdered Tierra?
If something were to happen to Tierra, obviously the child support to her is going to stop.
While the theory is starting to add up for investigators, there's just one problem: the timing.
Brooke did verify that Kevin was home. She was up a couple of times that night, tending to the newborn.
However, Brooke, Kevin, and the baby were the only ones in the home that night. Kevin and Tierra's kids were also sleeping over there.
So now detectives want to question Kevin's oldest son, Camden.
Maybe he'd heard something or seen something that night.
On November 25th, 2015, 1 week after his mother's murder, detectives have the difficult job of interviewing the 12-year-old at his grandmother's house.
You have to handle, a kid that age with kind of kid gloves. It's asking him, pretty simple questions.
Despite the care detectives take in questioning Camden, he's unable to say whether or not his father left the house that night.
Camden was asleep and did not see anyone coming or going from the house.
It was starting to look like questioning Camden was a bust.
Until the questions turned to the next morning, when Kevin drove the kids to school.
Camden mentions that on the way to school, his dad pulled over at a park.
What's going on, Dad?
Just wait in the car. I'll be right back.
He couldn't really see what was in the bag, but Camden did say that his father stopped and threw a bag in the garbage can.
So now detectives are wondering what was in the bag that Kevin had gotten rid of, and could it be the key to solving Tierra's murder?
It's been 1 week since Tierra Thomas's murder, and her 12-year-old son Camden has just given detectives a break in the case.
Tierra's son says that on the way to school the morning after the murder, his father, Kevin Campbell, stopped at the park, tossed a bag into the garbage.
He told his son it was just a bag of trash that he was getting rid of, but it could have been a murder weapon in there, it could have been some of Tierra's items.
It could have been the clothes that Kevin was wearing the night of the murder.
We just didn't know. But this brought up a huge red flag to police.
That's not the only thing the 12-year-old says that raises suspicion.
Camden told officers that his father had inquired about Martell's schedule in the days leading up to the murder, and that's something he had never done before.
It sounded like Kevin was trying to figure out when Tierra would be alone inside the apartment.
And what Camden says next leaves detectives all but convinced that Kevin was plotting her murder.
I asked about the keys. Said, did your dad ever ask you to bring a key? He goes, yes.
The day before Tierra's murder, his father had asked him to make sure he brings the key. We do know from the initial crime scene there was no forced entry, and this may very well explain the opportunity for Kevin to have been able to get in there.
This is very damning information.
Now, all detectives need is concrete evidence.
Camden was able to take the officers to the park where they dropped that bag off.
Though when detectives search the garbage can, they come up empty-handed.
Everything's gone. Nothing's there.
Undeterred by this setback, detectives turn their sights to Kevin's home in nearby Hammond, Indiana.
I had a search warrant drawn up and signed by a judge.
They go to Kevin's house, they do a full search, but they're unable to find any hard physical evidence.
There's no murder weapon discovered. There's no article of clothing. as far as I could tell, that connects him to the crime.
However, detectives do uncover one potentially useful piece of information.
They find that he has a home security system.
That's great information because it allows the officers to then go further in their investigation to see what the security system provides.
It was one of those systems where the security company provides 24-hour monitoring of the premises.
We contacted them, and they provided us a history of the activity the system did each day.
Detectives quickly scroll to the early morning of November 18th, just hours before Tiara's fiancé, Martell Robinson, found her barely alive in their apartment.
Kevin maintains that he never left his house. Brooke maintains that Kevin was there. However, the security system says otherwise. Someone in Kevin's home left the house about 4:37 a.m.
After that, there was no activity until 5:55 a.m.
That's a whole hour's time that someone was out. And that's plenty of time to get from Hammond to Portage for Kevin to get to Tiara's house and get back.
However, detectives aren't quite ready to make an arrest. They want one last piece of information to cement their case against Kevin: his cell phone records.
In addition to the information the phone directly provides, we can ask for cell tower information, and which we did in this case.
The records are telling.
At 5:38 a.m., Kevin's cell phone pinged on a tower in Portage, one of the closest towers to Tiara's home.
The tower puts Kevin within 1 mile of Tiara's apartment on the morning she was killed. It's the final piece of the puzzle.
The officers had enough evidence to charge Kevin with the murder of Tiara.
However, taking Tiara's killer into custody won't be a simple matter of knocking on his door and putting him in cuffs.
They had to arrest Kevin with caution. With him being a police officer, he had a lot of tactical gear and weapons.
He possessed body armor, so that ratchets up the chances for something bad to happen. So we made a decision that, hey, we're going to utilize the SWAT team to do this.
It's before dawn on December 3rd, 2 weeks after the murder, when the SWAT team moves into position around Kevin's house.
Talking with the detectives, Kevin had a little bit of a routine.
His wife worked at a 24-hour restaurant. She would start at 6 a.m. He would drive her to work. So the plan was to get him at home really right when he comes out, where he just doesn't expect this.
We were probably on site by around 5 a.m.
Hey, Jason, you got anything yet?
No, nothing yet.
It seemed like an eternity. It was getting to be past 6 o'clock. We have this arrest warrant. So now I'm trying to decide, do we just kick the door and go in and get him?
I don't see anything on the side of the house either. Wait, I've got a light on inside now.
Shortly after 6 o'clock, he starts to come outside, and we had the house surrounded.
Police! Look your hand! Stay there! Don't move!
The SWAT team moved in. Who knows what went through his mind? He took off running.
Stay right there! Got it!
Prior to becoming the chief, I was on the SWAT team for 12 years, going after people involved in major acts of violence such as this. So once we developed Kevin as a suspect, knowing that he's an officer, had a lot of training, a lot of experience, we started talking about the way to arrest him. All eyes were going to be on us. And Portage is probably like a lot of typical Midwestern towns. Homicides don't happen all that often, but when they do, we've got really good people to, handle these kinds of investigations. And I don't think Kevin was banking on that.
On December 3rd, 2015, 2 weeks after the murder of Tiara Thomas, a SWAT team has just confronted her ex-boyfriend, 31-year-old Kevin Campbell, outside his home.
As he exits the house, they try to apprehend him, but he takes off running.
Stay right there! I got him! Go around!
We had people in the front yard and tackled him and took him down. He was taken into custody without anyone getting hurt, and you couldn't ask for a better scenario.
January 9th, 2018. As the trial for Kevin Campbell gets underway, prosecutors face an uphill battle against the former officer.
They didn't have gunshot residue, they didn't have DNA, no footprints or tracks to even tie Kevin to the murder. I mean, it was going to be based solely on circumstantial evidence.
However, prosecutors believe they have a compelling argument based on the financial benefit Kevin stood to gain in the event of Tiara's death.
The child support was estimated at about $1,500 a month, and that was a substantial part of Kevin's monthly check.
Though the monthly payout was painful enough, prosecutors claim that Tiara's engagement to Martell Robinson was the final straw that pushed Kevin over the edge.
He was not just concerned about the money that was going out, but now she's got a new man in her life, and he thinks some of the money is going to be benefiting him.
According to the prosecution, Kevin had come up with a drastic solution.
The prosecutors argued that Kevin intentionally and deliberately took the children during a weekday, a time that he normally doesn't take the kids, so that he can have the kids out of the house, but also so that he could have access to the house key to get into the home.
Then, while his wife and children slept, he quietly slipped out of the house, though his movements didn't go undetected.
The home security system shows that on the night of the murder, somebody left out of that residence.
At 4:37 in the morning, Kevin left the house, drove to Tiara's home, where the cell phone tower showed he was in the area around that time.
Using the key he took from his son, prosecutors believe Kevin entered Tiara's apartment and crept quietly into the bedroom, gun in hand.
He put a pillow over her to silence the gun and pulled the trigger while she slept.
She would have survived the first shots, and thought is she was even able to put up a bit of a struggle. The shot that went through both arms would be a type of defensive wound.
His final shot was to her head, and while she fell to the ground, he took off.
Prosecutors argued that Kevin left the scene of the crime with plenty of time to drive home, walk in the house before 6 o'clock, just in enough time to take the kids to school.
To solidify their case, prosecutors call Kevin's son to the stand.
The son stated that his dad asked him to bring his key with him.
He also told the jury about his father stopping at the park and throwing something out on his way to school that morning.
The significance of that is obviously the fact that Kevin may be possibly getting rid of some evidence of this crime.
This was just devastating, coming from Kevin's own son.
When it's the defense's turn, Kevin's attorney makes the most of the case's circumstantial nature.
The defense was painting this as there was no hard physical evidence, no DNA, nothing really tying Kevin to this murder.
To bolster his case, Kevin takes the stand to provide his own emotional testimony.
He was extremely emotional and hurt by the fact that he was accused, but also by the fact that there was another murderer out there and he was innocent of this crime.
He says he can never hurt the mother of his 3 children.
Kevin also testified that he was behind on bills, but he was not financially depressed to that extent.
Kevin methodically dismisses almost every piece of evidence the prosecution has presented, from triggering the door alarm to stopping at the park on the way to school.
Kevin said he did open the door at 4:30 in the morning, just as the security system recorded, but that he was taking one of the baby's dirty diapers out to the trash.
He argued that the bag in his car was snotty tissues that he collected from his children.
But will his explanations be enough to sway the jury?
He was found guilty. It was a quick verdict, hour and a half or so. That's fast.
Not that Kevin accepts the jury's decision.
In the sentencing hearing, Kevin continues to hold on to his innocence, claiming for the family and community that he would one day find the murderer of Tierra.
Kevin's plea holds little water for the judge.
Kevin was sentenced to 55 years in prison. Under the state law, he would have to serve 75% of that time before he is eligible for parole. He won't be out until his 70s, at least.
Though justice was served, this brutal crime had more than one victim.
This story was tragic for, so many reasons.
3 children don't have a mother, really don't have a father.
They have to know and live with for the rest of their lives that their own father killed their mother.
Those closest to Tierra are doing all they can to give her children the life she wanted them to have.
Tierra's mom had to step up and take responsibility of raising her 3 kids, and she hasn't really had time to grieve because she has had to put, a brave face on for these kids and get them through this.
Martel's still involved in their life. He's taken them places, games, and so that's a testament to him.
But no amount of love can fill the void Tierra's untimely death left in the hearts of her fiancé and her children.
That's going to leave scars for a long time, if not forever.
It's just something that shouldn't have happened.
The ultimate tragedy is that a woman who was a terrific mother and by all accounts a very nice, wonderful person was killed and certainly didn't deserve anything like this.
There was nothing that could stop them from achieving their dreams.
They were ambitious, and they both wanted more.
They played well off of each other.
Until a seemingly random crime tears their world apart.
He smashes out the window, reaches in to grab the purse.
He shot her 4 times.
Detectives will do whatever they can to catch the killer.
It was so brazen. It was the day after Christmas.
No stone is going to be unturned.
But nothing can prepare them for the shocking truth.
Ruthless and heartless. It was horrible.
I was in total disbelief.
Is there a serial killer on the loose? Or is this the ultimate act of betrayal?
You felt so bad for this person, and now it turns out that person's guilty.
You're capable of a lot if you would do this.
Humans are curious creatures. They kill each other for the most ridiculous reasons you could possibly imagine, and they cover it up with lies so fragile a light breeze could shatter them. But the truth is patient. It waits in the dark, and eventually it always steps into the light. My name is Joe Kenda, and I have hunted humans for a living. I tell you, in my years on the job, I have seen every breed of liar. The ones who panic, the ones who cry, and the ones who walk into a police department at 3 a.m. with a story so absurd you have to wonder if they share a single functioning brain cell. That is exactly what happened just after Thanksgiving in the year 2016. In a quiet little place called Benson, North Carolina, most people were sleeping off their turkey dinners. The streets were dead. But into the police department parking lot strolled 2 men, Julian Valles Jr. and Jeremy Carpenter. They are not out of breath. They are not screaming for help. They just have a slight inconvenience. They claim their buddy, a 22-year-old kid named Christopher Cole Thomas, got paranoid, pulled their car over, threw the keys, and vanished into the pitch-black night. They say they are stranded. My. You have to be kidding me. A grown man runs into the dark in a strange town, and your biggest concern is calling a locksmith? Leaving is not a crime, but lying to the police most certainly is. Let's talk about Christopher Cole Thomas. Cole, as his family called him. He was a good kid, salutatorian of his high school, a university student who wanted to study medicine to help his autistic younger brother. That tells you everything you need to know about his heart. He was a caretaker, a protector, but like many young men in their early 20s, he felt lost. He wanted a break from textbooks, wanted to work with his hands, make some honest money. So he took a construction job up in Minnesota. He stepped out of his safe, loving world in rural Florida and walked right into a snake pit. Cole was naive to the darkness that some men carry in their pockets. He barely knew Julian and Jeremy. He tagged along on this road trip because he had nowhere else to go for the holiday. He thought they were friends. But predators do not have friends. They have collateral. For days, Cole's parents, Chris and Kathy, knew absolutely nothing. These upstanding citizens, Julian and Jeremy, filed a missing persons report but never bothered to pick up a telephone to call the boy's mother. It took a call from a boss back in Minnesota to break the world of Chris and Kathy into a million pieces. The boss had heard the whispers from the job site, a drug deal, a strip search, and then the words no parent should ever have to hear. I think they killed him. Chris and Kathy drove from Florida to North Carolina with their hearts in their throats. They did what the people who left Cole in the dark refused to do. They searched. They begged for answers. And while they did the heavy lifting, the police finally started pulling on the loose threads of Julian and Jeremy's ridiculous fairy tale. When you press a liar, their story shifts. It never holds its shape. Confronted by authorities, Julian and Jeremy admitted they did not drive across the country for family dinners. They drove down to buy methamphetamine in Mount Olive, a town about 40 minutes away. They met a man named Rudolfo De Leon Jr. and his associate Anthony James Jr. They bought the poison, but something went wrong. And this is where the psychology of a rat comes into play. I tell you, criminals are greedy, and they are phenomenally stupid. The private investigator on this case theorized that Julian was planning a double cross. He wanted to buy the drugs, then have his local associates steal them back. Free narcotics, and no one is the wiser, but they made a fatal miscalculation. They assumed Cole was just a clueless kid from Florida who only spoke English. They did not know he understood Spanish. Sitting in that car, Cole likely heard their whispers. He realized the men sitting next to him were not his friends, but his executioners. He felt the walls closing in. He knew they were being followed by drug dealers who were missing their product. He panicked. The drugs got thrown out the window. And in the criminal underworld, someone always has to pay for lost product. It is usually the easiest target. The lies kept unraveling. Video surveillance is a beautiful thing. It does not blink and it does not lie. The local police captain spent hours staring at screens until he caught a ghost in the machine. At 10 minutes past 1 in the morning, a camera behind a local pharmacy caught two figures walking in the distance. It was Cole, but he was not alone. Walking right behind him, shadowing his every move, was Jeremy. When police presented this little cinematic masterpiece to Jeremy, his story evolved again. He claimed he followed Cole to calm him down. They ended up at a church. Jeremy claims he closed his eyes to pray, and when he opened them, Cole was gone. He heard a car door slam, maybe gunshots. And then, what did this deeply concerned, prayerful man do? He went to a fast food restaurant for a cup of water. You can practically smell the garbage radiating from this story. Then comes the telephone data. Criminals always think they are smarter than technology. They are not. After reporting Cole missing, Julian and Jeremy's telephones showed they met back up with the local dealers. And what else was moving with them? Cole's telephone, the very device they later handed over to the police, claiming he left it in the car. They took his property. They drove out of town. And then the signal went completely dead at 4 in the morning. They turned it off. You do not turn off the telephone of a missing boy if you want him to be found. You turn it off because you know he is never coming back. The investigator eventually found another moving part in this circus, a man named Gordo. Gordo admitted he was sent to track Cole down that night. He claimed they found the boy on foot, disoriented him with a baseball bat, and forced him into a vehicle to hold him for the others. They drove him out into the county, and that is where the trail goes cold. No evidence in the car. No body in the woods. Just a deafening silence. Cole's father was desperate. He did something that breaks my heart just thinking about it. He used his own money to post bail for Anthony James Jr., one of the very men who likely helped disappear his son. He hoped separating the pack would make the weakest wolf turn on the others. Cole's mother sat across from Anthony, looking into the eyes of a man who knew where her boy was resting. She did not yell. She just spoke to him as a mother. Anthony cracked just a little. He admitted things went bad when the drugs went missing, but he would not cross the finish line. He held on to the secret, just like the rest of them. These men were charged with concealing a death and obstruction of justice. But the charges were ultimately dropped to protect a future homicide prosecution. Jeremy took his secrets to the grave in the year 2024. The rest of them are out there, breathing free air, thinking they got away with it. But guilt is a heavy anchor. It drags you to the bottom. Someone in that group knows exactly what happened in the dark that night. They know where Christopher Cole Thomas is. They know they traded a brilliant, kind young man's life for a handful of methamphetamine. The data knows they were there. The parents know they're lying. And sooner or later, one of them will realize that the only way to get right with whatever creator they pray to is to open their mouth. Until then, Cole's family waits in the nightmare. And the truth waits right there with them, patient, cold, and inevitable. Humans are curious creatures. They kill for the most ridiculous reasons you can imagine, and sometimes they just walk into the abyss, taking all their secrets with them. I tell you, in all my years working homicide, you see patterns. You see the greed, the lust, the blind anger. But every now and then, you come across a puzzle where the pieces do not just fit poorly. They seem to belong to an entirely different puzzle. This is the story of the Jameson family. It is a tragedy steeped in delusion, desperation, and the cold, hard reality of human greed. Let us set the scene. October 17th, 2009, Latimer County, Oklahoma. Panola Mountain is not the kind of place you go for a casual Sunday stroll. It is rugged, isolated, and unforgiving. The kind of place where people go to disappear, or where they are made to disappear. The local sheriff gets a call about an abandoned pickup truck. Deputies arrive after dark and find a small dog locked inside, starving, barely clinging to life. My, what kind of monster abandons a helpless animal to a slow, agonizing death? That detail alone tells me we are not dealing with a simple hiking accident or a peaceful family outing gone slightly awry. Inside that truck is a treasure trove of red herrings. identification cards, heavy coats, a cellular phone equipped with a global positioning system, and a bag shoved under the seat containing $32,000 in cash. You have to be kidding me. You do not leave that kind of money unattended unless you're not coming back. And then there is the letter. 7 pages of pure, unadulterated venom written by Sherilyn Jameson to her husband, Bobby. She calls him a toxic monster and accuses him of attempted murder. It is the frantic, disjointed rambling of mind in profound distress. To understand how that truck got to that mountain, you have to look at the ghosts hunting this family long before they ever drove up there. Bobby and Sherilyn were drowning. Bobby suffered a severe back injury years prior, leading him down the dark, spiraling staircase of prescription painkiller addiction. Sherilyn was battling severe bipolar disorder and depression, and by the late summer of 2009, she had stopped taking her medication. When the human mind loses its anchor, it drifts into terrifying waters. She had attempted to take her own life just a month prior. They were facing financial ruin, losing their home, and fighting a bitter, paranoid legal war with Bobby's own father. The psychological toll was catastrophic. They started seeing demons. They bought a satanic Bible to learn how to fight evil spirits. And Bobby was actively looking to buy special bullets to kill ghosts. They were a family utterly consumed by their own internal darkness, desperately seeking the light. They thought buying 40 acres of off-the-grid land in the wilderness would save them. They believed isolation was the cure to their chaos. They were dead wrong. Let us look at the morning of October 8th. The surveillance footage from their home shows them packing their truck for the trip. For 30 solid minutes, they walked back and forth from the house to the vehicle in a bizarre mechanical trance. Sometimes they are carrying items. Sometimes they are carrying absolutely nothing at all. Was it drugs? Was it a shared psychotic episode? Or was it just a profound, exhausting confusion of 2 people carrying the crushing weight of their broken lives? At one point, Sherilyn is seen carrying a brown briefcase. That briefcase and whatever was inside it vanished into thin air, never to be seen again. They drove up the mountain, stopping to speak with locals. They had long, meandering conversations about living off the grid. They reached their plot of land just after 2 in the afternoon. We know this because they used their cellular phone to take a photograph of their 6-year-old daughter, Madison. It is a candid shot. She has her arms crossed, looking at the camera, surrounded by the desolate woods. It breaks my heart. That little girl was the only innocent party in this entire tragedy, dragged into the wilderness by parents who could barely navigate their own living room, let alone the rugged terrain of Panola Mountain. The truck was found pointed back down the narrow dirt road, as if they were ready to leave. The keys were still in the ignition. So what happened? Some folks want to sell you the murder-suicide theory. They point to Sherilyn's mental state and the hate letter. I do not buy it for a second. It makes zero logical sense. If she wanted to kill her family and herself, she would not march them over 2 miles through thick brush, mud, and unforgiving terrain. Bobby had chronic back pain. He could barely walk, let alone hike. And a mother does not leave her child's beloved dog in a locked car to starve. Furthermore, if it was a murder-suicide, where's the weapon? A gun does not just walk away. No, this was an abduction. For years passed in silence. Then, on November 16th, 2013, a hunter finds the truth hiding in the brush. 3 skulls, a few scattered bones. The remains of the Jameson family, resting almost 3 miles from their abandoned truck. The medical examiner could not determine a definitive cause of death due to the severe deterioration of the remains. But I tell you right now, they did not just wander off and die of exposure. Someone marched them out there. Let us analyze the psychology of our unseen perpetrator. When you look at suspects, you look at who had access and who had motive. The personal connections, like Bobby's father or their former disgruntled roommate, were cleared. The father was bedridden, dying in a care facility. That leaves the mountain. The people living off the grid. Someone up there knew they were coming. Someone knew they were carrying a large sum of cash to buy land. Perhaps they saw the brown briefcase. The killer is opportunistic and entirely devoid of empathy. They do not care about the emotional misery Bobby and Sherilyn were already suffering. They only saw easy prey. Take one of the local men they spoke to, a man who claimed to have had long, friendly chats with them about herbal medicines and land. Public records suggest a man matching his exact name and age was involved in a fatal shooting in California back in 1997, stealing a victim's truck before fleeing to Oklahoma under an assumed identity. My, the past is never truly buried. Whether it was him or another opportunistic predator stalking the woods, the killer operates purely on greed and control. They approach the truck just as the family is preparing to leave. They use the threat of extreme violence to force Bobby, Sherilyn, and little Madison out of the vehicle. So fast they leave the keys, the phone, the cash under the seat, and the dog. The killer takes the brown briefcase, believing it holds a primary cash stash or something else of immense value, and marches the terrified family deep into the woods. The psychological torture of those final moments is something I do not like to dwell on, but it is a reality we must acknowledge as investigators. Bobby and Sherilyn, for all their faults and mental struggles, must have realized in those agonizing minutes that their dream of a peaceful life was ending in a nightmare. And little Madison, looking to her parents for safety, finding absolutely none. The perpetrator likely executed them in that remote spot and walked away, melting back into the shadows of the mountain. They were careless enough to leave $32,000 under the seat, blinded by the immediate grab of the briefcase. Criminals are rarely as smart as they think they are. They make massive blunders driven by adrenaline and greed, but because of the extreme isolation, because of the heavy rainstorms washing away the physical evidence, and because of the 4 agonizing years it took to find the bodies, this killer has managed to hide behind a wall of silence. The official ruling might be an undetermined death, but my instinct screams homicide. You have individuals with dark, violent pasts living in those woods, people who have fled society for a reason. You put desperate, vulnerable people carrying cash into their path. And it is exactly like throwing blood in shark-infested waters. Someone on that mountain knows exactly what happened on October 8th, 2009. They wake up every single day knowing they extinguish an entire family for a fleeting payday. But secrets have a way of clawing their way to the surface, eventually. Until then, the mountain keeps its silence, and the Jameson family waits for justice. Humans are strange creatures. They kill for the most ridiculous reasons you can imagine, and sometimes they kill for no reason at all other than the dark and twisted satisfaction of playing God. I tell you, I have looked into the eyes of hundreds of murderers, and the most dangerous ones are not the wild-eyed lunatics screaming in the streets. They are the quiet ones, the ones who smile at you, the ones who offer to help search for the very victim they buried. We are going back to the summer of 1973 to the majestic mountains of Montana. The Yeager family is on a camping trip. Father, mother, and a whole brood of kids. They do everything right. But evil does not care about your family vacation. It is the middle of the night. 12-year-old Heidi wakes up in the tent she shares with her siblings. She feels a breeze. There should be no breeze inside a closed tent. She reaches out in the pitch black and touches grass. Someone has sliced a gaping hole through the canvas. Her 7-year-old sister Susie is gone. Just like that, vanished into the thin mountain air. My. You have to be kidding me. You take your family to nature to escape the monsters of the city, only to find the worst monster of all waiting for you in the woods. When the parents wake up, they find little Susie's stuffed animals abandoned in the dew-soaked grass. The panic sets in. It is a suffocating and blinding terror. Mother Marietta looks up at the black sky and prays for the sun, but the sun only brings more shadows. The local sheriff and the Federal Bureau of Investigation arrive. They search everywhere. They find a rock with human blood. They find a faint trail. But Susie is gone. Soon, the investigators start hearing whispers. 5 years earlier, in 1968, a 12-year-old boy was stabbed in his tent at this very same campground. Coincidence? There's no such thing as a coincidence in homicide. But the police have a missing girl, and the clock is ticking. The days turn into weeks. The family refuses to leave. Marietta becomes a fixture of hope and despair. Then the calls begin. A voice on the line. A man claiming he has Susie. He demands $25,000. Later, he calls a deputy's house late at night and raises a ransom to $50,000. He tells him to drop it at a bus depot in Denver, Colorado. Is it a crank? A cruel joke? No. He proves it. He tells him Susie's index fingernails are slightly deformed. That is a detail only a parent, or a kidnapper looking right at her hands, would know. I tell you, this is a hallmark of a sadist. He does not just want money. He wants to pull the strings. He wants to watch this mother bleed out emotionally, drop by drop. It is pathetic. It is the ultimate cowardice. You want to feel powerful? Go pick a fight with a man your own size. Do not torture a grieving mother. But the pickup never happens. The trail goes ice cold. The Yeager family has to do the hardest thing in the world. They have to pack up their van, minus one child, and drive home to Michigan. Can you imagine that ride? The silence in that vehicle must have been deafening. But Marietta does not give up. She sits by the phone. She waits. She negotiates with the devil. He calls again in September. He taunts Susie's teenage brother. He says they have to wait. He enjoys the psychological game. Fast forward to February 1974. Another girl goes missing. 19-year-old Sandy Dickman, a waitress in a small town nearby. The police search an abandoned ranch. They find a pair of women's underwear in the brush. They find Sandy's car hidden in a barn. They find a bloody whip. And then they find a burn pile. Over 1,000 bone fragments. Teeth. The pathologists get to work. Yes, it is Sandy. But there is a twist. There are bones of a second person in that ash. A little girl between the ages of 5 and 8. The dots are connecting, and they form a straight line to a man named David Meyerhofer. David is 20-something, former military, a local carpenter. He is the guy who always asks the cops how the investigation is going. He is the guy who just happened to find a red blouse near the crime scene. He is the guy who asked Sandy out on a date, and she turned him down. Rejection is a powerful trigger for a fragile ego. The investigators bring him in. He acts like a Boy Scout. He takes a polygraph. He passes. They let him go. You have to be kidding me. Let me tell you something about polygraphs. They do not detect lies. They detect stress. If you have a conscience, if you have a soul, lying makes you sweat. It makes your heart race. But if you are an empty vessel, a psychopath with ice water in your veins, you can pass a polygraph while eating a sandwich. The local cops think he is clear, but the behavioral science agents from Quantico take a look. Criminal profiling was just a baby back then, but these agents paint a masterpiece. They say the killer is a white male in his 20s, intelligent, military background, socially awkward, a loner. They say he keeps souvenirs. They say he will call the mother again on the 1-year anniversary. They draw a perfect picture of David Meyerhofer without ever seeing his face. And on the exact anniversary of the kidnapping, the phone in Michigan rings. It is him. He talks to Marietta for an hour. He plays with her mind. He says he still has Susie. He says he cannot give her back. Marietta begs. She pleads. She shows the strength of a titan, keeping this monster on the line. He claims he wanted a little girl. He claims he is taking care of her. It is all a delusion. It is a fantasy of a pathetic and hollow man trying to justify his own evil. But this time the devil makes a mistake. A local rancher gets his phone bill. There's a long-distance charge to the Yeager house in Michigan made at 3 a.m. The ranch is right next door to the abandoned property where the bones were found. The rancher says his house was locked, but he saw tire tracks near an external phone line, tracks made by a specific tire. The exact tires on the truck driven by his former employee, David Meyerhofer. David knew how to tap a line because of his military communications training. The net is closing. But the police want to be sure. They ask him to take another polygraph. this time with truth serum, and he passes again. I tell you, you cannot medicate a conscience into a man who does not have one. The agents finally stop playing nice. They execute a search. They find the nightmare. Bloody sheets, souvenirs, a little girl's clothing, a to-do list for targeting a Girl Scout camp. This arrogant fool actually wrote down his plans. He thought he was untouchable. They even bring the Jaegers in to identify his voice, to look him in the eye. He denies it all. He goes on the run and makes one final taunting call to Marietta, using the voice of some unknown child to torment her further. But they catch him, and when they look closer, when they look in his freezer, they find the severed hand of Sandy Dickman wrapped in butcher paper. The game is over. The walls are closed in. David realizes he is not the smartest guy in the room anymore. He confesses. He admits to taking little Susie. He admits she fought back. A brave 7-year-old girl fought this former Marine, and because he was a coward, he killed her. He admits to killing Sandy. He admits to killing the Boy Scout years earlier and another teenager. For lives snuffed out for absolutely nothing. No grand purpose. No logical reason. Just the pathetic urges of a broken mind. He agrees to plead guilty to avoid the death penalty. But David Meyerhofer could not face the music. A few hours after his confession, he hangs himself in his jail cell. The ultimate act of a coward. He took the lives of innocent people, but he was too terrified to face the consequences of his own actions. You look at a case like this, and you realize the depths of human depravity, but you also see the heights of human resilience. Marietta Jaeger endured psychological torture that would break most people, yet she stood tall. She sought answers. She even found it in her heart to forgive him later in life. That is a level of grace I do not possess. For me, David Meyerhofer was a rabid dog, and the world is a better place without him in it. The murders, explaining that he and other family members had remained at his home playing cards until late into the night, providing each other with consistent alibis. Forensic teams worked diligently to analyze the evidence gathered from the apartment. They successfully extracted a clean DNA profile from the discarded marijuana cigarette found on the table. They hoped this profile would match someone in the national database, providing an immediate identity for the suspect. However, when the search was run through the national system, no matches were found. Without a match in the database, and after interviewing more than 50 individuals, the leads began to dry up. The case grew quiet, remaining unresolved for over 2 years. Part 4, The Broken Silence. The silence surrounding the case was finally broken in the autumn of 2015. A routine arrest in Houston for a nonviolent property offense, specifically the theft of a horse, led to the registration of a new felony profile in the state's database. The individual arrested was Willie Guillory. Because he had been a minor of 16 years of age at the time of the Arlington murders in 2012, his DNA had not previously been recorded in the adult felony database. Now, as an adult with a felony charge, his profile was entered into the system, triggering an immediate match with the DNA found on the marijuana cigarette at the crime scene. In October of 2015, investigators brought Willie Guillory in for questioning. When confronted with the scientific evidence linking him directly to the apartment in Arlington, the young man became overwhelmed and broke down. He confessed to his involvement, but insisted that he had not acted alone. He revealed that his uncle, Bobby Guillory, had recruited him to participate in what was presented as a trip to Arlington to assist with a specific task. According to Willie, they had traveled from Houston to Arlington on June 9th, 2012. He claimed that his uncle possessed a key to the apartment, allowing him to enter without forcing the door. Once inside, they had intentionally scattered items, left a beer bottle wrapped in the blue bandana, and placed the pills and marijuana cigarette to create the illusion of a gang-related burglary. When the elderly couple returned home, a physical struggle ensued. Willie admitted to assisting his uncle in restraining the couple, after which they were secured with duct tape and placed in the bedroom closet before the two men departed back to Houston. When pressed by detectives as to why they would target an elderly couple they did not know, Willie pointed to a spiritual advisor in Houston named Daphne Wright. He explained that his uncle had met with Daphne, who claimed that a family owed her a substantial amount of money and had refused to pay. According to Willie, Daphne had suggested that if the debt could not be resolved, she wanted the individuals involved permanently removed, orchestrating the plan and providing the key to the residence. With this crucial testimony, investigators moved swiftly to locate Bobby Guillory. In December of 2015, detectives located the 52-year-old Bobby at his residence in Katy, Texas, and placed him under arrest. Faced with the reality of the charges and the confession of his nephew, Bobby also chose to cooperate, expressing deep remorse and fear. Bobby confirmed that he had been experiencing severe financial difficulties in 2011 after losing his job. He claimed that Daphne Wright had approached him, offering him $10,000 to carry out the task. He portrayed Daphne as a powerful figure who managed her clients with extreme authority, operating almost as a spiritual creditor. Bobby explained that the financial arrangement between Daphne and the Sewing family had grown extraordinarily complicated over many months. Chow Tran and Hong Lu had continuously sought Daphne's spiritual services on credit, believing that her rituals were essential to saving their business. Over time, this accumulated debt had ballooned to an immense sum, estimated to be between $250,000 and $280,000. When Daphne demanded payment, the family was unable to produce the funds. Knowing that the couple held significant life insurance policies, Daphne allegedly realized that the payout from these policies could resolve the outstanding debt. According to Bobby, Daphne had instructed him on how to proceed, even providing him with the key to the apartment, a key that she claimed to have received directly from Chow Tran. Part 5, The Scales of Justice. The investigation now turned its full attention to Daphne Wright. On August 31st, 2016, detectives visited her home in Houston. She lived a seemingly structured life with her husband and 3 daughters, presenting herself as a strong, direct presence within her household and community. When questioned, Daphne acknowledged that she knew Chow Tran as a client, but declined to provide details regarding their financial transactions. She maintained a calm, distant demeanor, offering no assistance to the investigators. Undeterred, detectives secured an arrest warrant and a search warrant for her residence. During the search of her home, investigators discovered detailed financial ledgers. These records revealed that Daphne charged substantial fees, ranging from $10,000 to $40,000 for her spiritual services, which included rituals to alter fortunes and address personal disputes. Her husband, Howard, cooperated with the police, maintaining his complete ignorance of any criminal activity and asserting his belief in his wife's innocence. To build a successful prosecution against the primary organizer of the crime, the state recognized the necessity of securing definitive testimony. In 2015, financial investigators subpoenaed Chow Tran's records, discovering that following the passing of his in-laws, he had purchased a new home, and the sewing business had been permanently closed. Under the guidance of his legal counsel, Chow eventually agreed to speak with prosecutors. He presented a narrative in which his family had felt completely dominated by Daphne's perceived spiritual authority. He claimed that they believed she possessed the power to cast devastating curses as easily as she could lift them, leaving them in a state of constant fear regarding their unresolved debt. Chow made the startling assertion that his mother-in-law, Hong Lu, had grown so desperate to protect her family from spiritual harm that she had suggested sacrificing herself so the family could collect the insurance money to satisfy Daphne. He claimed that Daphne had embraced the idea, insisting that both elderly parents must pass away to ensure the insurance payout would cover the entirety of the debt. While investigators found the notion of Hong volunteering for such a fate highly implausible, they recognized that Chow's testimony was vital to securing a conviction against Daphne. In exchange for his full cooperation and testimony, prosecutors offered Chow immunity. The trial of Daphne Wright commenced on August 26, 2019. Chow Tran took the stand, describing Daphne as an exceptionally demanding and manipulative individual who would stop at nothing to secure the funds she believed she was owed. The defense vigorously challenged Chow's credibility, arguing that he had fabricated the story of spiritual coercion to obscure his own financial motives. They pointed out the complete lack of written documentation, emails, or receipts verifying the existence of a $280,000 debt. The defense contended that Chow had orchestrated the plan to secure the $850,000 in insurance benefits for his own personal enrichment, highlighting that he had received immunity while remaining deeply complicit. Despite the defense's arguments, the jury deliberated carefully on the evidence presented, including the testimonies of Willie and Bobby Guillory. In September of 2019, the jury returned a verdict of guilty on the charges of capital murder. Daphne Wright was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The resolution of the trial brought a quiet end to a long and painful chapter for the community. For the detectives who had dedicated years of their lives to uncovering the truth, the outcome was bittersweet. While the individuals who carried out the physical act and the person who organized it were held accountable, the immunity granted to Chow Tran remained a point of professional contemplation. Yet, the primary focus remained on honoring the memory of Long Nguyen and Hong Lu, two hardworking individuals who would venture across the world to build a legacy of love and unity for their family. Their journey, marked by hope, perseverance, and an enduring commitment to their heritage, serve as a reminder of the strength of the human spirit and the quiet, persistent pursuit of justice. The summer sun of Texas had a way of baking the pavement until the air itself seemed to shimmer with heat. But on the morning of June 10th, 2012, the air in Arlington carried a different kind of stillness. It was early, just past 7:29 in the morning, when the quiet of a residential neighborhood was broken by the arrival of a police cruiser. Officer Weller, a seasoned responder with 14 years of service, guided his patrol car to a halt outside an apartment complex. He had received a dispatch for a welfare check, a routine call that usually ended with a simple explanation: an oversleeping relative, a misplaced telephone, or a brief trip to market. But as he stepped out into the humid morning air, he saw a family gathered on the sidewalk, their faces etched with deep, silent worry. Among them was Chow Tran, a 38-year-old Vietnamese immigrant who had made the call. Chow was the primary link between his family and the wider English-speaking community of Arlington. Having worked closely with his father-in-law, Long Nguyen, and his mother-in-law, Hong Lu, Chow explained to the officer that they had come to check on the elderly couple, only to find the apartment silent. The family had noticed a window slightly ajar, a detail that filled them with an inexplicable dread. They stood outside, too terrified to cross the threshold themselves. Officer Weller walked up to the apartment door, calling out as he entered. The living room was in complete disarray. Compact discs were scattered across the floor, drawer handles hung open, and furniture had been pushed aside as if in a hurried search for valuables. It bore all the traditional hallmarks of a burglary. He searched the kitchen, then the bathroom. Finding nothing, he walked into the quiet bedroom. At first glance, the room appeared empty, and Weller felt a brief wave of relief. He assumed the elderly couple had simply gone for an early morning walk to escape the heat, leaving their home vulnerable to an opportunistic thief. But as he turned to leave, the beam of his flashlight caught a series of dark hand smudges on the wall next to a small, narrow closet. A sudden hesitation took hold of him. A veteran's instinct whispered that something was deeply wrong behind that closet door. Taking a breath, he pulled it open. Inside the cramped space lay Long Nguyen and Hong Lu. They were bound with heavy duct tape, their heads wrapped tightly. The sheer brutality of the scene left the officer in a state of profound shock. He stepped back out into the living room, unable to speak, unable to even use his radio for several long moments. When he finally regained his composure, he requested immediate assistance from a supervisor and the homicide unit. Soon, Detective Stewart and his team from the Arlington Police Department arrived. Stewart, a veteran with 21 years in homicide, found himself shaken by the senseless violence inflicted upon an elderly, defenseless couple. The physical evidence pointed toward a robbery gone wrong, but the extreme nature of the binding suggested something far more personal. On the coffee table, investigators found unusual items designed to look like the remnants of a wild night: a plate of crushed prescription pills and a discarded marijuana cigarette. Tied around a nearby beer bottle was a light blue bandana. To some, this would suggest the involvement of local street gangs, which were known to operate in parts of the region. However, Detective Stewart remained skeptical. The scene felt too perfectly arranged, almost like a stage play designed to lead investigators down a false path. Long Nguyen and Hong Lu had immigrated to the United States from Vietnam in the year 2000, seeking to build a legacy for their children and grandchildren. They had established a commercial sewing business in Arlington, a city with a vibrant and industrious Vietnamese community. For a time, their business flourished, even securing contracts with major entertainment brands. But by 2011, their fortunes had shifted. A major contract was lost, and the business began to struggle under a mountain of debt. In their search for a solution, the family turned to traditional beliefs. They sought the assistance of a spiritual advisor who advertised services to lift curses and bring good fortune. Chow Tran and his mother-in-law had traveled to Houston to consult with a woman named Daphne Wright. Daphne promised to restore their luck, but instead of relief, the family found themselves trapped in an escalating financial arrangement. The fees for her rituals accumulated rapidly, eventually growing to a sum between $250,000 and $280,000. As the investigation proceeded, the medical examiner revealed that the cause of death was suffocation due to the extensive duct tape wrapped around the victims' faces. The brutality of the act reinforced the detective's belief that this was not a simple burglary. A breakthrough occurred when the insurance company contacted Detective Stewart regarding a life insurance policy on the couple worth over $1 million. The primary beneficiary was Chow Tran. When questioned, Chow explained that the policy was intended to ensure the continuity of the family business in the event of a tragedy. Chow and his family possessed solid alibis for the night of the murders, having attended a birthday celebration that lasted late into the evening. For over 2 years, the case grew cold. DNA collected from the marijuana cigarette left at the scene did not match any profiles in the national database. Then, in 2015, a man named Willie Guillory was arrested for a felony horse theft in Houston. Because of his new felony conviction, his DNA was entered into the national system. It was an exact match for the sample recovered from the crime scene. At the time of the murders, Willie had been only 16 years old. When confronted by detectives with the DNA evidence, Willie broke down and confessed. He revealed that he had not acted alone. His uncle, Bobby Guillory, had brought him along to Arlington. Bobby had been given a key to the apartment to stage the robbery. More importantly, Willie revealed that the entire plot had been orchestrated by Daphne Wright, the spiritual advisor. Daphne had demanded her money, and when the family could not pay, she declared that she wanted them dead, so the insurance policies could be collected. In December of 2015, police arrested Bobby Guillory. Facing capital murder charges, Bobby confessed his role, confirming that Daphne had promised him $10,000 to carry out the deed. He also dropped a bombshell. Daphne had obtained the apartment key directly from Chow Tran. The revelation of Chow's involvement stunned investigators. It appeared that Chow, desperate to escape the massive debt and under the intense psychological influence of Daphne, had agreed to plan. He had left the key under a mat for the conspirators to find. To secure a conviction against Daphne Wright, whom prosecutors viewed as the mastermind and puppet master of the entire tragedy, they offered Chow Tran immunity in exchange for his full and honest testimony. During the trial in August of 2019, Chow testified extensively, describing Daphne as a greedy and controlling figure who held immense sway over his family's decisions. The defense argued that Chow was using the spiritual advisor as a scapegoat to pocket the insurance payout for himself, pointing out the lack of written documentation regarding the massive debt. The jury ultimately found Daphne Wright guilty of capital murder. She was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Bobby and Willie Guillory also faced justice for their roles in the crime, although Chow Tran walked free due to his immunity agreement. The investigators maintained their belief that justice, in its own way, would eventually find its balance for everyone involved. The warmth of the Texas sun in early summer always had a way of reminding Long Nguyen of his youth. In the quiet, green outskirts of his homeland, it was a gentle warmth, the kind that settled deep into the bones and promised that, no matter how difficult the journey had been, the earth would always offer a place to rest, to build and to grow, alongside his beloved wife. Hong Lu Long had spent his entire life believing in the quiet power of patience, hard work, and the invisible threads of destiny that connected human souls. To understand their journey is to understand the quiet strength of those who carry their entire world in a few suitcases, crossing vast oceans in search of a peaceful harbor. When the couple first arrived in the United States of America in the year 2000, they did not see a foreign land of cold concrete. They saw a grand, open canvas where their children and grandchildren could write stories of joy, achievement, and security. They settled in Arlington, a bustling city nestled in Tarrant County, where the breeze carried the laughter of a diverse and thriving Vietnamese community. For more than a decade, their home was a sanctuary of sweet aromas, traditional melodies, and the steady, rhythmic hum of sewing machines. Long and Hong had established a commercial sewing business, transforming simple fabrics into beautiful garments. It was a family endeavor, drawing their children and their son-in-law, Chow Tran, who possessed a fluent English and charismatic presence needed to represent the business to local contractors. For many years, the family thrived, even securing a wonderful and lucrative contract to manufacture garments for a global entertainment giant, bringing magic to children across the nation. But life, much like the changing seasons, is rarely a straight path of uninterrupted sunshine. By the year 2011, the grand contract had concluded, and the gentle hum of the sewing machines began to slow. In moments of quiet anxiety, the human heart often looks backward, seeking comfort in the ancient traditions and spiritual beliefs of the ancestors. Long and Hong, like many before them, believed that the flow of prosperity was governed by unseen spiritual forces, and that sometimes a helping hand was needed to lift the heavy clouds of misfortune. It was this search for hope that led the family to seek the guidance of a spiritual advisor. Through a local newspaper, they discovered a woman named Daphne Wright, who operated from Houston, some 250 miles away. She promised to lift curses, restore harmony, and bring back the golden days of abundance. What began as a sincere quest for peace, however, gradually became a complicated web of reliance, debt, and deep spiritual worry. On a quiet Sunday morning on June 10, 2012, the peaceful silence of the Arlington neighborhood was broken by a call to emergency services. Chow Tran requested a welfare check on his elderly in-laws, noting that they had not answered their door and that a window to their apartment was unusually open when the first responding officers arrived. They were met by a worried family waiting anxiously outside. Officer Weller, a dedicated public servant with 14 years of experience, approached the residents with a calm and reassuring demeanor. Upon entering, the apartment showed signs of a sudden and chaotic intrusion. Items were scattered, and the usual pristine order of the elderly couple's home was replaced by disarray. Moving cautiously through the rooms, the officer eventually discovered the tragic truth within a small bedroom closet. The beloved elders, Long and Hong, had been targeted in a terrible act of greed. The initial examination suggested a staged scene, designed to mimic the chaotic patterns of local street gangs. A light blue bandana wrapped around a bottle and scattered personal items were left behind as a false trail. Yet, the seasoned homicide investigators, including Detective Stewart with 21 years of service, quickly realized that this was not a random burglary. It was far too deliberate, far too personal. The investigation that followed became a testament to the tireless dedication of the local police force, who refused to let the memory of Long and Hong fade into the cold archives of unsolved cases. For more than 2 years, the team pursued every potential lead, interviewing dozens of neighbors, family members, and associates, leaving no stone unturned. The breakthrough came in the year 2015 through a remarkable twist of fate. A young man named Willie Guillory, who had been a minor at the time of the offense, was arrested in Houston on an unrelated charge. His DNA profile, newly entered into the national database, provided a perfect match to a small piece of evidence recovered from the Arlington apartment. When questioned by investigators, Willie broke down and revealed the truth. He had been led into the scheme by his uncle, Bobby Guillory, under the direction of the spiritual advisor, Daphne Wright. The plot had been born not out of gang rivalry, but out of a terrible, misplaced sense of financial desperation and greed surrounding the family's outstanding debts and life insurance policies. Bobby Guillory was soon apprehended, and he too confessed, confirming that Daphne Wright was the central coordinator who had organized the plan, believing she could claim the family's assets. The key to the apartment had been left under a mat, a tragic detail that pointed to an insider's compliance. In August of the year 2019, the wheels of justice turned fully. Daphne Wright was brought to trial, where the details of her spiritual business and the heavy financial burdens she placed on her clients were laid bare before a jury. Despite the complex nature of the testimonies, the truth prevailed. Daphne was convicted of capital murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, ensuring that she could never again exploit the faith and hope of vulnerable families. Though the legal journey left some questions lingering regarding the full extent of everyone's involvement, the memory of Long, Gwyn, and Hong Lu remains a shining beacon of love, resilience, and family devotion. They are remembered not by the shadows of their final moments, but by the decades of warmth, laughter, and beautiful garments they created, wrapping their community in the enduring embrace of their heritage. The morning sun always had a way of softening the harsh edges of Arlington, Texas, casting a golden, warm glow over the sprawling suburban landscapes. For many years, the city had been a sanctuary for families seeking new beginnings, a place where different cultures interlace like threads in a grand, colorful tapestry. Among those who had crossed oceans to weave their own thread into this community were Long Gwyn and his beloved wife, Hong Lu. They were a couple who carried the quiet dignity of their homeland, Vietnam, in every step they took, possessing a warmth that endeared them to everyone they met. They had lived lives of honest labor, building a commercial sewing business from the ground up with the hope of leaving a lasting legacy for their 3 children and grandchildren. Their lives were defined by deep family bonds, a shared history of resilience, and an unwavering belief in the goodness of people. Yet, on the morning of June the 10th, 2012, that peaceful dream was shattered in a way that left even the most seasoned investigators in a state of profound disbelief. It began at 7:29 in the morning with a phone call to emergency dispatchers. The voice on the other end belonged to 38-year-old Chow Tran, a Vietnamese immigrant and the son-in-law of the elderly couple. His voice carried a tremor of deep worry as he requested a welfare check on his in-laws, explaining that they were not answering their door and that things at their apartment did not look right. Chow explained that his father-in-law, Long, was in his 70s and that his family had gathered outside the residence, too terrified by the unusually open window and the eerie silence to venture inside themselves. When the responding officers arrived at the quiet apartment complex, they immediately sensed that this was no ordinary welfare check. It was rare to receive such requests so early in the morning, and the sight of an entire family standing outside in the morning chill, paralyzed by anxiety, signaled that something was terribly wrong. Upon entering the apartment, the signs of what appeared to be a burglary in progress were everywhere. The rooms were in disarray, with drawers pulled out and items scattered across the floor. Officer Weller, a dedicated officer with 14 years of experience, moved through the quiet home, calling out into the silence. There was no response. The living room, kitchen, and bathroom were completely empty. At first glance, the bedroom also appeared vacant. Relieved, the officer turned to leave, thinking perhaps the elderly couple had simply gone for an early morning walk. But as he turned back toward the door, his flashlight beam caught a series of small, dark hand smudges on the wall next to a narrow closet. A sudden, chilling intuition urged him to hesitate. Following his duty, he slowly pulled open the closet door. Inside, the tragic reality of what had occurred was laid bare. Long Nguyen and Hong Lu were gone, their lives taken in an unspeakably violent and cruel manner. They had been bound tightly with duct tape, and their heads and mouths were covered in layers of the thick adhesive. The scene was incredibly chaotic and bloody, indicating a fierce struggle. For the responding officer, the sight was a devastating shock that momentarily stole his ability to speak or even use his radio to call for backup. When the homicide detectives arrived, led by veterans who had spent over 21 years investigating the city's darkest corners, they too were deeply shaken. It was clear that the couple had been subjected to severe physical force before their passing. Initial clues scattered around the apartment seemed to point in many directions. There was a plate with crushed prescription pills on a table, a discarded marijuana cigarette, and a light blue bandana wrapped around a beer bottle. To the investigators, these items felt almost too deliberate, like a carefully staged theatrical scene. The light blue bandana was a color often associated with active local gangs known for extorting local businesses, and at first a robbery or gang extortion gone wrong seemed like the most logical theory. Yet, experienced detectives knew that sometimes things that appear too perfect are designed to mislead. Real gang members rarely left such neat, obvious calling cards after committing such extreme crime. They suspected the scene had been staged to throw them off the track. As the community mourned the loss of the sweet, generous couple who had never bothered a soul, the police began the painstaking process of interviewing family members and collecting forensic evidence. Because Chow Tran spoke the most fluent English, he became the primary spokesperson for the grieving family. He explained to detectives that the family had gathered the previous evening to celebrate his father-in-law's birthday. The elderly couple had enjoyed themselves, staying until 10:30 before receiving a ride home. That was the last time anyone admitted to seeing them alive. Chow painted a picture of a sewing business that, despite their best efforts, had fallen on hard times. They had once secured a highly lucrative contract to manufacture garments for a major commercial giant, even producing items for Disney. But by 2011, that contract was lost, and the business began a steep downward spiral. Desperate to save their livelihood and protect their family from financial ruin, the couple turned to the deeply rooted spiritual traditions of their youth. In many traditional cultures, when a family faces sudden, overwhelming misfortune such as bankruptcy or severe legal trouble, they seek the guidance of a spiritual advisor to perform cleansing rituals and ward off perceived curses. Searching through a local Vietnamese newspaper, Chow and his mother-in-law, Hong, discovered an advertisement for a spiritual advisor based in Houston, approximately 250 miles away. The advisor, a woman named Daphne Wright, claimed she possessed a unique ability to lift powerful curses and bring immense good fortune to those in need. Hoping to turn their luck around, Chow and Hong traveled to Houston to consult with Daphne. She performed elaborate rituals, promising that their business would soon flourish once more. But rather than bringing prosperity, this relationship marked the beginning of a much darker chapter. Over the course of a year, as the business continued to struggle, the family became deeply indebted to Daphne. She ran her spiritual services on credit, and the debt quickly ballooned to an astronomical sum of between $250,000 and $280,000. As the investigation into the murders deepened, detectives uncovered a major financial detail. The elderly couple had life insurance policies totaling at least $1 million, with Chow Tran named as a beneficiary. When questioned about the policy, Chow maintained that it was a standard business precaution meant to ensure the family could sustain the sewing business if one of them were to pass away. He and his family provided what appeared to be airtight alibi for the night of the crime, explaining they had been playing cards together until late in the evening. For over 2 years, the case remained cold. The forensic samples collected from the crime scene, including the DNA from the discarded marijuana cigarette, did not match anyone in the national databases. It was a frustrating period of silence for the investigators, who refused to let the memory of Long and Hong fade. The breakthrough finally came in 2015, triggered by an entirely unrelated and almost bizarre event. A young man named Willie Guillory was arrested for a felony involving the theft of a horse near Houston because he had been a 16-year-old minor at the time of the murders in 2012. His DNA had never been entered into the national database. But as an adult felon in 2015, his profile was finally registered, triggering an immediate and perfect match with the DNA found on the marijuana cigarette at the Arlington crime scene. When detectives brought Willie in for questioning, the young man quickly broke down. He confessed that he had been present, but insisted he was merely a follower. He pointed the finger at his uncle, 49-year-old Bobby Guillory, who had enlisted his help for a job in Arlington. According to Willie, they had been given a key to the apartment to stage a burglary. An entire crime scene, including the bandana, the pills, and the marijuana, had been carefully set up to make it look like the work of local gang members. Most shocking of all was Willie's revelation that the entire crime was a murder-for-hire plot, orchestrated by Daphne Wright, the spiritual advisor. Willie recalled hearing Daphne tell his uncle that the family owed her a vast sum of money, and that if they did not pay up, she wanted them dead. Armed with this information, the police arrested Bobby Guillory in December of 2015. Bobby, who had no prior criminal record, also confessed, expressing deep remorse and fear. He admitted that Daphne had targeted his financial desperation, offering him $10,000 to carry out the deed. He revealed that Daphne had learned of the substantial life insurance policies and saw them as the only way to collect the massive debt she felt she was owed. Bobby then dropped a final, stunning bombshell. He claimed that the key to the apartment had come directly from Chow Tran. Detectives were stunned by this revelation of familial betrayal. They focused their efforts on Daphne Wright, arresting her at her Houston home in late 2016. A search of her residence revealed detailed business ledgers showing she charged clients tens of thousands of dollars for her spiritual services and curse removals. Despite her cold and defiant demeanor, the evidence against her was mounting. To secure a conviction against the mastermind, prosecutors made a difficult decision. They offered Chow Tran immunity from prosecution in exchange for his full, truthful testimony. Chow took the stand, portraying Daphne as an incredibly greedy and manipulative woman who exercised a powerful, almost hypnotic control over his mind and body. He claimed that his mother-in-law, Hong, had been so terrified of Daphne's spiritual wrath that she had actually suggested sacrificing herself so the family could collect the insurance money to pay the debt. While investigators found this claim highly implausible, Chow's testimony was crucial. He admitted to leaving the apartment key under a doormat for the perpetrators under Daphne's instructions. In September of 2019, the jury found Daphne Wright guilty of capital murder, sentencing her to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Bobby and Willie Guillory also faced justice for their roles in the tragedy, though the lack of charges against Chow Tran left a lingering sense of incompletion for the detectives who had dedicated years to the case. They found solace in knowing that the truth had finally been brought into the light. The memory of Long Nguyen and Hong Lu, two gentle souls who had crossed the world in search of a peaceful life, was honored by the tireless pursuit of justice, leaving a powerful lesson about the dangers of greed and the enduring strength of truth. Chapter 1: The Horizon of a New Beginning. The sun rose over Arlington, Texas, casting a warm, golden hue across the quiet suburban neighborhoods. To the passing traveler, this was a city of progress, a place where concrete highways intersected with green parks, and where the gentle hum of morning traffic whispered of daily routines and honest labor. But to the families who had traveled across oceans to settle here, it was something far greater. It was a physical manifestation of a promise, the sanctuary where dreams, once whispered in the quiet nights of distant lands, could finally take root and flourish. Among those who had found their peace in this bustling community were Long Nguyen and his beloved wife, Hong Lu. They had arrived in the United States in the year 2000, carrying with them very little in the way of material wealth, but possessing an abundance of hope, a profound dedication to hard work, and a deep reverence for their heritage. They were a gentle couple, known to their neighbors for their quiet kindness, their ready smiles, and the meticulous care they took of their modest home. In their native Vietnam, they had learned the value of resilience. Having lived through decades of transition, they understood that true security was not built overnight, but was woven slowly, thread by thread, much like the fabrics they handled daily in their commercial sewing business. When they first arrived in Texas, they brought their 3 children and immediately sought out ways to contribute to the local community. Arlington possessed a vibrant, growing Vietnamese-American population, a community that had established its roots in several waves of immigration, particularly after the historic events of 1975. Long and Hong saw in this community a beautiful tapestry of old and new. Here, one could find traditional markets selling fragrant herbs and fresh ingredients, alongside modern businesses operated by energetic young entrepreneurs. The older generation worked tirelessly to preserve their language, their values, and their spiritual traditions, while ensuring that their children and grandchildren received the very best education the Western world had to offer. With the help of their son-in-law, Chow Tran, who possessed a strong command of the English language and an outgoing personality, Long and Hong established their sewing enterprise. Chow became the public face of the business, interacted with contractors, negotiating terms, and navigating the complexities of American commerce. For nearly a decade, their efforts were met with remarkable success. They secured lucrative contracts to manufacture garments for major commercial entities, including legendary organizations like Disney. It seemed, for a beautiful stretch of time, that the American dream was not just a distant ideal, but a living reality that they held in their very hands. Chapter 2: The Gathering Shadows. But life, as any seasoned traveler knows, is a series of seasons. By the year 2011, the bright summer of their success began to give way to a challenging autumn. The large contracts that had sustained the sewing business began to dwindle, and the family found themselves facing unexpected financial pressures. In times of difficulty, human beings naturally seek comfort in the familiar, reaching back to the traditions that have sustained their ancestors for generations. In the cultural heritage that Long and Hong cherished, there existed a deep respect for spiritual balance. For thousands of years, people have believed in the existence of unseen forces that govern prosperity, luck, and family harmony. When a business faltered, or when sickness touched a household, it was not uncommon to seek the guidance of a spiritual advisor, someone who could look beyond the physical world, diagnose the source of misfortune, and perform rituals to restore peace and abundance. Chow Tran, sharing his family's concern for the failing business, began to search for a solution. It was during this period of vulnerability that they came across an advertisement in a local Vietnamese language newspaper. The advertisement spoke of a spiritual advisor located in Houston, some 250 miles away, who possessed the ability to lift curses, invite good fortune, and restore harmony to troubled lives. Her name was Daphne Wright. Encouraged by his mother-in-law, Hong Lu, who held a deep and innocent faith in these traditional practices, Chow made contact with Daphne. The journey to Houston was undertaken with hearts full of hope. They met at Daphne's residence, where she presented herself as a powerful mediator of the spiritual realm. She agreed to perform the necessary rituals to turn their business affairs around. To a family in distress, the promise of a spiritual shield was incredibly comforting. They returned to Arlington with renewed optimism, believing that the dark clouds would soon dissipate. However, as the months passed, the business did not recover. Instead of questioning the efficacy of the rituals, the family's anxiety only deepened. They became caught in a cycle of dependency, believing that perhaps the negative forces affecting them were stronger than initially realized, requiring more elaborate and significantly more expensive spiritual interventions. Daphne Wright, recognizing the depth of their desperation, began to extend services on credit. Over time, the financial obligations ballooned, reaching an astonishing sum between $250,000 and $280,000. This was a debt the family could not possibly hope to pay. Yet they remained terrified of the spiritual consequences of failing to honor their commitments to a woman they believed held the power to bless or curse their lives. Chapter 3. An autumn morning in Arlington. The transition from spring to summer in Texas is often marked by sudden, intense heat. But the morning of June 10, 2012, began with a deceptively peaceful stillness. At 7:29 in the morning, the Emergency Dispatch Center in Arlington received a call. The caller was Chow Tran, his voice trembling with a mixture of concern and anxiety. He requested a welfare check on his elderly in-laws, Long Nguyen and Hong Lu, who resided in a modest apartment nearby. Chow explained to the operator that his son and wife had gone to the apartment to check on the couple, as they had not been able to reach them. They had noticed that a window to the residence was slightly open, and things did not appear correct from the outside. Too anxious to enter themselves, they waited for the authorities to arrive. Officer Weller, a dedicated member of the Arlington Police Department with 14 years of service, was dispatched to the scene. When he arrived, he found the family members gathered outside. It was an unusual sight for so early in the morning, and the palpable tension in the air immediately signaled that this was no ordinary welfare check. Upon entering the apartment, Officer Weller observed signs of what appeared to be a burglary. The living space was in disarray, with items scattered as if someone had searched the home in a hurry. He called out, his voice echoing through quiet rooms, but there was no response. The kitchen, the bathroom, and the living room were empty. He approached the bedroom, his focus entirely on finding the elderly couple and ensuring their safety. Initially, the room appeared unoccupied. He prepared to turn and leave, hoping that perhaps they had simply gone for an early morning walk, when his flashlight illuminated hand smudges on the wall adjacent to a small closet. A sense of professional instinct, combined with sudden, quiet hesitation, washed over him. He approached the closet door and opened it. Inside, he made a discovery that would haunt his memory for years to come. Long Nguyen and Hong Lu were inside, bound securely with duct tape. There was no life left in them. Chapter 4, The Pursuit of Truth. The arrival of the Arlington homicide investigators marked the beginning of a meticulous search for answers. Detective Stewart, a veteran with 21 years of experience in the division, assumed leadership of the investigation. The scene was one of intense disarray, suggesting a struggle had occurred near the entrance before moving further into the apartment. Among the scattered household items, investigators discovered several peculiar clues. On the coffee table lay a plate with crushed prescription pills, and nearby, a discarded marijuana cigarette. Most striking, however, was a light blue bandana wrapped carefully around a beer bottle. To an observer, these items strongly suggested the involvement of local street gangs, who were known to operate in the wider region and occasionally target local businesses. However, Detective Stewart and his team remained analytical. While the staging of the scene pointed toward gang activity, the sheer severity of the violence directed at a peaceful, elderly couple seemed disproportionate for a simple robbery. They began to consider the possibility that the scene had been intentionally staged to mislead the investigation. The subsequent autopsies revealed the tragic reality of the couple's passing. While they had sustained blunt force injuries, the actual cause of death was suffocation, resulting from the extensive application of duct tape. This revelation deepened the investigators' determination to bring those responsible to justice. This was not a random act of impulse. It was a deliberate, targeted act. Chapter 5, Unseen Connections. In the days following the discovery, investigators worked tirelessly to construct a profile of the victims' lives. Searching for any possible motive, they interviewed neighbors, business associates, and family members, searching for any thread that might lead to a suspect. Chow Tran, as the primary English speaker for the family, cooperated fully with the initial inquiries. He explained that the family had gathered the previous evening to celebrate Long's birthday. The elderly couple had enjoyed themselves thoroughly, leaving the gathering around 10:30 in the evening with a ride from another family member. This was the last time they were seen alive. Chow also discussed the financial challenges of the sewing business, confirming that it had struggled significantly, but he expressed absolute bewilderment as to who would wish harm upon his gentle in-laws. He painted a picture of a sweet, generous couple who had no enemies and lived a quiet life dedicated to their family. A routine inquiry by Detective Stewart with insurance providers soon introduced a complex new element to the case. He learned that a substantial life insurance policy, valued at approximately $1 million, existed on the couple. The designated beneficiary of this policy was Chow Tran himself. When questioned about the policy, Chow explained that it had been established as a protective measure to ensure the continuity of the family business in the event of an unexpected tragedy. Given the airtight alibi provided by Chow and his family for the night of the occurrence, and the lack of any matching physical evidence at the scene, investigators could not establish a direct link. The deoxyribonucleic acid profiles obtained from the cigarette at the scene did not match Chow, any family members, or any individuals registered in the national database. For over 2 years, the investigation continued without a major breakthrough. The files remained on the detectives' desks, a constant reminder of an unsolved tragedy, waiting for the one piece of evidence that would unlock the truth. Chapter 6, The Unlikely Catalyst. Justice often moves along unexpected pathways. In October 2015, over 3 years after the passing of Long and Hong, a seemingly unrelated event in Houston provided the critical breakthrough. A young man named Willie Guillory was arrested for the theft of a horse, a felony offense in the state of Texas. Because of this felony charge, his physical profile was entered into the national database. Shortly thereafter, the automated system identified a perfect match between Willie's profile and the evidence recovered from the cigarette at the Arlington apartment in 2012. At the time of the incident, Willie had been only 16 years old, which explained why his profile had not previously appeared in adult databases. Armed with this definitive scientific link, investigators brought Willie in for questioning. Under careful interrogation, the young man's resolve collapsed. He broke down, weeping, and admitted his presence at the scene, but insisted he had not acted alone. He revealed that his uncle, Bobby Guillory, had recruited him for a trip to Arlington in June of 2012. Willie explained that his uncle possessed a key to the apartment and had instructed him to help, staged the scene to look like a gang-related burglary, utilizing the bandana, the pills, and the bottle. When asked why they had targeted the specific couple, Willie delivered a statement that shifted the entire direction of the case. He asserted that the entire event was a contract arrangement orchestrated by a woman named Daphne. Right. Chapter 7, The Mastermind Revealed. The revelation of Daphne Wright's involvement connected the separate pieces of the puzzle. Investigators now understood that this was not a random tragedy, but a calculated plan born of greed and manipulation. Detectives traveled to Houston to locate Bobby Guillory. Upon his arrest, Bobby also confessed to his role, confirming that Daphne had promised him $10,000 to carry out the act. He explained that he had been in a desperate financial situation at the time, having lost his employment, and had allowed himself to be swayed by Daphne's promises. Bobby described Daphne as an assertive, controlling figure who managed her spiritual consulting business with absolute authority. He revealed that the financial debt owed by the Arlington family had reached a point where Daphne demanded resolution, knowing of the substantial life insurance policies. She had devised a plan to eliminate the couple so that the insurance funds could be collected and used to satisfy the outstanding debt. Most shockingly, Bobby claimed that the key to the apartment had been provided directly by Chow Tran. With this evidence, investigators arrested Daphne right at her home in Houston. A search of her residence revealed detailed business ledgers, documenting transactions where she charged clients tens of thousands of dollars for spiritual services. Chapter 8, The Scales of Justice. The legal proceedings that followed brought the tragic narrative to its final resolution. To secure the conviction of the primary organizer, prosecutors made the difficult decision to offer immunity to Chow Tran in exchange for his complete and truthful testimony against Daphne Wright, Bobby Guillory, and Willie Guillory. In the courtroom, Chow presented a detailed account of the events. He described how the family had become entirely dependent on Daphne, believing in her spiritual authority and fearing the consequences of her anger. He testified that the pressure of the debt had created a state of complete desperation, leading to the tragic decision to sacrifice his in-laws to satisfy the financial demands. The defense argued vigorously that Chow was a willing participant who had directed the events for his own financial gain, highlighting the lack of written documentation regarding the massive spiritual debt. However, the testimony provided a clear and compelling narrative of the manipulation and greed that had driven the conspiracy. In September of 2019, the jury returned a verdict of guilty against Daphne Wright for capital murder. She was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Bobby Guillory and Willie Guillory also faced the legal consequences of their actions, ensuring that those who had physically carried out the act were removed from society. While the investigators expressed professional disappointment that Chow Tran did not face criminal charges due to the immunity agreement, they took solace in the knowledge that the primary force behind the tragedy had been held accountable. The community of Arlington and the family members who remained could finally find a sense of peace, knowing that the truth had been brought completely into the light of day. The morning sun always had a way of softening the harsh edges of Arlington, Texas, casting a golden, warm glow over the sprawling suburban landscapes. For many years, the city had been a sanctuary for families seeking new beginnings, a place where different cultures interlace like threads in a grand, colorful tapestry. Among those who had crossed oceans to weave their own thread into this community were Long Nguyen and his beloved wife, Hong Lu. They were a couple who carried the quiet dignity of their homeland, Vietnam, in every step they took, possessing a warmth that endeared them to everyone they met. They had lived lives of honest labor, building a commercial sewing business from the ground up with the hope of leaving a lasting legacy for their 3 children and grandchildren. Their lives were defined by deep family bonds, a shared history of resilience, and an unwavering belief in the goodness of people. Yet, on the morning of June the 10th, 2012, that peaceful dream was shattered in a way that left even the most seasoned investigators in a state of profound disbelief. It began at 7:29 in the morning with a phone call to emergency dispatchers. The voice on the other end belonged to 38-year-old Chow Tran, a Vietnamese immigrant and the son-in-law of the elderly couple. His voice carried a tremor of deep worry as he requested a welfare check on his in-laws, explaining that they were not answering their door and that things at their apartment did not look right. Chow explained that his father-in-law, Long, was in his 70s and that his family had gathered outside the residence, too terrified by the unusually open window and the eerie silence to venture inside themselves. When the responding officers arrived at the quiet apartment complex, they immediately sensed that this was no ordinary welfare check. It was rare to receive such requests so early in the morning, and the sight of an entire family standing outside in the morning chill, paralyzed by anxiety, signaled that something was terribly wrong. Upon entering the apartment, the signs of what appeared to be a burglary in progress were everywhere. The rooms were in disarray, with drawers pulled out and items scattered across the floor. Officer Weller, a dedicated officer with 14 years of experience, moved through the quiet home, calling out into the silence. There was no response. The living room, kitchen, and bathroom were completely empty. At first glance, the bedroom also appeared vacant. Relieved, the officer turned to leave, thinking perhaps the elderly couple had simply gone for an early morning walk. But as he turned back toward the door, his flashlight beam caught a series of small, dark hand smudges on the wall next to a narrow closet.